Hey there guys, it's Joey, and this is going to be a video concerning the Morrigan and an issue which has come up twice today and has come up before, so I'm going to talk about it. Now, first and foremost, I'm not on camera for a couple of reasons. I slipped in Tesco and I sort of smacked my chin a bit, so it's a bit sore. I don't really want to be staring at my sore chin the whole way through a video. It would just be distracting for me and for everyone else. And I quite like this setup as well. So you can just listen to me and you don't have to look at me. Look at my red face. So this is something that came up, and the first person who asked in a public forum. So that is there for people to see on my channel, on my discussion channel. And the question was about sort of the Morrigan turning hateful and my thoughts on this. And I've had a few people be like, I think she hates me and I think she's causing me problems and this, that and the other. What are your thoughts? What do I do? That sort of thing. And so my first thought was, personally, I would question first of all whether or not it was Morrigan that you were dealing with, and if it was really her, and if it wasn't really her, if it was some kind of spirit or some kind of negative entity or your own self. Something along the lines of one of those. And I was mulling over it all day, like, would the Morrigan really get nasty, get hateful with an individual? I talked to my partner about it, sort of meditated on it with Morrigan a bit, because never in all the time I've communed with her or connected with her has she ever come across as hateful or spiteful, ever. And the thing is, I think a lot of this is probably human fear of her being a dark goddess. So I was mulling over the idea of her being wrathful because I could visualise that. She's a dark goddess and she's not someone who you disrespect. There's also been a lot of talk, I've noticed a lot of talk and a lot of emphasis on you have to have a matron, patron, deity. And I think it bears mentioning again a few points that I have mentioned in the past, and one of these is that I didn't have a matron or patron or defined path which I followed for many years. I think I sat and worked it out, and I was like, I first started, I consider myself to have been born a witch, and a lot of things came naturally. Me and my sister discuss knowing about pendulums without ever being taught about pendulums at age 7. And neither of us discussed it with anybody, and then my sister walked in on me doing it and was like, you do it too. And that's one of her memories, one of her age 5 or 6 memories, So as in studying and searching out a path, I probably started about 12, and I think I worked it out that I had been looking into it in one form or another, researching, studying, path walking, practicing, 13, I think it was, years before I worried about having a matron or patron goddess. Only when the time was right did I start seeking that. And I think the overemphasis on having a matron or patron puts unnecessary stress on people who haven't been in the path that long, because they may or may not be ready for a committed relationship to a particular deity, and no relationship is more committed than the Morrigan, in my opinion. The second thing that bears repeating, is that you don't choose the Morrigan. You do not choose the Morrigan. The Morrigan chooses you. And you will see this sentiment and you'll see this statement said by a lot of people. Like, you don't choose her. You don't go chasing her thinking she's going to listen to you, because she just won't listen to you. She just won't. You know, and I think there are, unfortunately, a lot of people, oh yeah, totally follow the Morrigan, I'm a badass. And you are missing the point completely and utterly and hugely. And I've talked about misrepresentation of the goddess Morrigan on many occasions. I've talked about this sort of over sanitizing of the goddess Morrigan to try and make her flowers and bunnies and kittens, and that's really against everything I've ever seen. And then there is the over dramatic version, you know, she's so dark and wrathful and she's going to smite all my enemies. I don't know what this voice is. This voice is me being silly. Also, sore throat. The Morrigan is not a spiteful schoolgirl that you use to thwart your enemies. And because she's not that, this makes the idea that she would single out an individual for her hatred seem to me to be hugely unlikely. And my first thoughts were, is it the Morrigan you've been dealing with from get-go? If it's not, then is it possible you've got some sort of negative spirit thing going on? Is it possible that... I don't know. Because you see, the thing to me is, if you have the Morrigan come to you, you're going to bloody know about it. You can't mistake it. You can't be unsure about it. And I find it very unlikely that she would deeply invest in anybody who she thought would dishonour her on any level, who would quit her on any level. And, you know, I don't know how else to put it. I've said before that the Morrigan does seem to me to work in two distinctive ways. There are those who are her children, and those who are her children are chosen by her, and that's it. And to be honest, I've never ever ever felt the need to say, you know, I'm walking away from Morrigan. No, it's not for me anymore. I've had Brigid appear with the Morrigan's permission. There was this whole banter back and forth between them. It was interesting. And so she's sort of like a support. She's around. I've seen her. Felt her energy, felt the difference, and seen the difference in personality. She's softer, she's gentler, she's a Brigid. So she's by no means a pushover. I very much doubt any Celtic goddess is. But she's... I'm trying to think of... Let's think of the right way of putting it. I guess it's literally the swan to the crow. The swan is graceful and has that loving energy of, you know, soulmate energy, but on the same energy, it's strong. And you should not underestimate the strength of swans, although a lot of the rumours about them are made up. And then you have the crow who, through human symbolism, misguided or not, becomes a death omen rather than an omen of love, and you can see the human interplay of symbolism between the two, and has that mystery and that mysticism and that strength in a very, very different way. That it's much more connected to battlefields and things of that nature. And that's the difference between the two for me. So for the Morrigan to be wrathful with one of her own would take huge amounts of dishonour. Like, ridiculous. Like, violation of everything that she stands for. And you're going to expect that with any goddess, any deity, I think, of, especially of a dark goddess creed. But far more likely than that sort of wrath is the kind of wrath where she basically is like, you're on your own. And there are some really strange bird calls right now. No, I just said that. Like a screeching. I think we're getting somewhere. And I think that when you actually sit and think about it, that being thrown out and being like on your own is actually so much worse. Because she's far more likely to do that because you are going to feel the loss of her. That's what it would be, in my opinion. It would be like, if you're going to disrespect me, get out. Never in a million years do I think the Morrigan would chase people. That was one of the questions. Like, would she harass me? No. I wouldn't believe the Morrigan would harass anybody in a million years. Now, if the Morrigan's trying to get somebody's attention, like she's trying to get through to someone, trying to deliver a message to someone, she can be quite persistent. But that tends to come, in my experience, in the form of deep, meaningful signs, symbolism, pictures, messages, appearing in meditation, appearing in dreams. As in harassing someone to follow her, I don't believe that in a million years. The Morrigan has a deep, ingrained mystery, honour, a code of honour, an ethic. She's a warrior. She's not, as I said before, a schoolgirl that goes around smiting your enemies. Absolutely no. Basically. And I think, honestly, if you annoyed her or you made her angry, which is going to take some doing, I'll explain that why in a minute, then I think it's far more likely you would get one cut-off message like, you're on your own, or, you have dishonoured me, or you have disgraced me, and gone. And I think you would then feel the loss of her and it would be your loss. I don't think at all, I can't fathom that she would basically harass somebody for their time, because she's a goddess. She's the deity, you're the human. She's not going to harass you for your time. And this sort of harkens back to the whole, she chooses her children quite carefully. And I think sometimes people don't realise that, you don't go chasing her, you go petitioning her particularly, and she shows up. And I did mention she shows up in two ways, and I should go back to that quickly. Either she chooses her children, or she sort of has a passing influence. And she might show up in a passing influence kind of way to those people who are desperately in need, and she shows up with her energy and her opinion. Her energy can be completely overwhelming to some people, and I've known people to say it's too much. It freaked me out. It was so strong, it was so forceful's the wrong word. It's like it cuts through. It's literally like your spearhead. You know, it's not this gentle ethereal energy which a lot of people are used to. It's like bang. It's the smack against a shield. It's the thrust of the spear. It's not something to be toyed with, messed around with, taken lightly. And to be honest, I think the children that she chooses permanently are people who are going to understand that from the get-go. People who are only going to dedicate themselves to her because it's just coming from a place of pure love and dedication and honour to her path. That being said, the Morrigan is sometimes a hands-off goddess. What do I mean by hands-off? I mean, the Morrigan lets you make your own mistakes and you're on your own. Because the Morrigan, to me, is a goddess who constantly tests her children. She's constantly testing them. She's you know, it's up to you to make the choice in this situation. Here's the choice. Here's the challenge. You can do it. Go. And that might be it. That might be all you get. I've had times where, not that she's gone, I've never ever felt that she's gone, but I know that she's on purpose taking a back seat. And if you follow the Morrigan, you have to be able to recognise those points. And if you're going to have, if you're going to stress out every time that she does it, then she's not for you. And you know, the first time can be quite stressful. I understand that. However, she prepared me for that. She told me that that would be the case. You know, this is your mess, fix it. That's her. That's her in a nutshell. You know, you did it, you messed up, you fix it. And that to me isn't the same as saying this goddess has this hateful energy and she's mad at me and she's punishing me. That doesn't sound like my goddess. And is she capable of punishing people? Absolutely. And, you know, you continue disrespect to her and I think you'd be in trouble. But I can't fathom what kind of disrespect you'd have to engage in and why you would even engage with that. I wouldn't. You know, the commitment to the Morrigan for me, dedication, is a deeply complicated and deeply meaningful thing, which is why I brought up the fact that I don't think we should be forcing matrons, however you want to say it, down people's throats like it's an absolutely vital part of somebody's path straight away. No, it's something that you build up to and you enter fully knowledgeable and committed to what you're doing. It's building a relationship for starters. It's not take, think that she's going to coddle. The Morrigan is never, ever going to coddle. You know, if you make a royal F-up of something, that's your royal F-up and you need to deal with it. If I think I've made a really, I don't know, a large mistake, because I try to avoid that, I try and walk every day with as much honour and an open heart and an open mind as I can. But when I think I've screwed up, I say to her, you know, I screwed up and I acknowledge that and I'm sorry if it offended you in any way, or if I, you know, I would never want you to think bad of me. And every single time the Morrigan's like, shh. What are you on about, woman? No, she tends to be accepting of that, acknowledging that, because you are acknowledging your own self-introspection. You are acknowledging the fact that you are human, you're going to make a mess, you're going to make mistakes. Now, that being said, there's a difference between acknowledging your mistakes to your goddess and continually making the same mistake over and over again. If you're not listening to her, then she probably will withdraw a bit. Particularly if there's something she wants you to look at. She is a goddess of challenges and introspection, particularly on your part. It's about growth, and growth is never easy. Personal growth is not easy, and that's why a lot of people veer away from actual spiritual growth. People think spiritual growth, spiritual enlightenment is going to be one of these pop fizz moments where it's like suddenly, oh, I'm a better person. I have grown and changed and woot. And spiritual growth is actually difficult, painful, messy, emotionally devastating. It quite frequently breaks down all the walls of everything that you were and rebuilds you up from scratch. Particularly if you follow the Morrigan, because that's one of the traits of her followers are quite frequently survivors. The type of man and woman that she often appears to and really seeks out as her kids, as her children, as her followers, as her sons and daughters, her priests and priestesses, are people who have already survived overwhelming odds of trauma of one form or another. And the reason that she seeks those people out is because they have already survived. They have already proven that they have what it takes to be committed to a goddess such as she. This path isn't easy, and I've said that a million times. This path isn't light and fluff balls. I've said that before as well. It's not, you're not going to suddenly be, I don't know, dark and scary and you can turn people into toads either, because there's no balance in this. There's no introspective analysis in this. There's no learning. There's no taking yourself apart and rebuilding yourself into something bigger and better and more strong. The Morrigan is not for everybody, and I think more people say they're with her than are, and I think people want to be associated with her, thinking it will make them into something else. And the thing about being with the Morrigan is she will make you into something else. And it's not easy. That doesn't mean that she's full of hate for anybody. To me, this sort of idea of a goddess hating an individual is far too much of a human-based reaction about what human beings do to one another, and not on the same level as what a deity would engage with. It just seems how's the best oversimplification. You know, we were talking in the video about Yes All People about how human beings are looking for one reason to blame for chaotic actions. They see a chaos and they wish to explain it in the simplest form possible, and it's not really something that you should be engaging in, because it's just oversimplification to the point of misunderstanding. That's what the idea of a goddess hating an individual sounds like to me. It sounds too human, or negative entity. It's too basic. It's a human reaction to throw hate in the eyes of somebody. I also had somebody sort of say, the goddess wanted to herself bought something in this interpretation. Absolutely not. I've had periods where the Morrigan wanted absolutely nothing out at all, and the whole process of that exercise was about me engaging on an energy field rather than a materialistic field, I guess. I enjoy, as you can see from the candles and crystals in front of you, having physical things to honour her, and I enjoy having a place permanently set up for her. I enjoy that. But that's a human reaction. That's a human creation, focal point for the sake of honouring her. Do I think in a million years the Morrigan will be like, buy me some shit? No. I can't fathom that. I can fathom her being like, you need to make me something in your particular field of expertise. Why? And this field of expertise could be words. This could be your own dedication or poem. I've heard that a lot. This could be your own verse of words, your own little prayer, if you like, to her, because you are then giving something in honour, in energy, in word, in personal vibration from your heart and soul and mind out loud into the universe, and offering something up in praise. Sure, I can get behind that. Or, you know, engaging in your gifts, because she's basically prodding you to engage your gifts in a form of celebration. Go into yourself, you know you can do this, you know you can create this, go. But would I think that she would ask you to buy her something? Again, that sounds like we're harkening back to some sort of schoolgirl mentality, like, oh, you have to buy me something if you want my time. No. You could create a little space for the Morrigan with some branches or twigs from a particular tree, some feathers that you found, and yourself. And as long as that had deep, meaningful symbolism, that's just a very, very basic idea of something you could do. I've said on occasion that, you know, people ask me what can I give in offering, and I've said, as I've just said, words, energy, time. It's the human being that's consumed with offerings in terms of physical stuff. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, you know, there's nothing wrong with wanting a space for whichever god or goddess you work with, and you want this space of honour, and you enjoy that, and that helps you have visual cues to, you know, altering your state, to resonating at a higher vibration, to taking the smell of the incense and the light of the candles and all those things to be cues of sensory sort of keying in to your deity. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's a human way of experiencing deity and connecting to deity, and that's where material items tend to come in. And I think a lot of this is actually human self-doubt, for one reason or another. And I've seen a lot of doubt this week. A lot of doubt in what people can do, in themselves, in their own personal power, in their spell work, in their connection with deity. I've never doubted my relationship with Morrigan, ever. Please don't make me do that. I just said that thinking, oh, I shouldn't have said that out loud because she'll do something now just to test me. Please don't. Or do, you know. I'll still be here. I think a lot of it is self-doubt and human error, basically. And with the Morrigan isn't really a goddess that sort of... She does not appreciate people who would pick her up and drop her, and that's self-doubt. That's doubt in her. That doesn't vibe with me. Because for me this is it, you know, the dedication is a big, serious thing. And I don't think that gets driven home enough to a lot of people. You know, dedication to one deity or another is a serious thing. Dedication to the pagan path is a serious thing. It's a promise. It's an oath. And I think in modern times we've actually lost the deeper meaning of what it is to uphold honour and uphold an oath. People just don't care. And that's a shame, and it's a sad state of affairs, and it's not something you want to bring on into a warrior path for certain. So we do need to teach people better about giving their oath to other people, to paths, to spiritual paths, to mundane paths, and especially to deity. Okay, so we talked about self-doubt a little bit, and I think a lot of the fear of the goddess comes from self-doubt. And if, you know, you're doubting your actions, you're doubting your relationship to her, you're doubting her herself, and a lot of that fear is going to manifest itself in some way or another within your life because you are manifesting it. If you are full of doubt and fear, the worst is happening and somebody hates you, and you're probably actually manifesting your own negative experience. That seems very likely to me. I've seen people do it. I've done it to myself when I was less experienced, you know. I've seen my mother do it on a day-by-day basis. Always expecting the worst case scenario. Of course it happened. You're manifesting it. Shouted at her once, she wouldn't listen to me, you know. You're bringing this in, you're doing it to yourself. I can't vibe with the idea that the Morrigan would single out a person for hatred. As I said, I think if you annoyed her, she would just be like, you're on your own completely, enjoy that, because you would feel the loss of it. I know I would. It's probably the worst thing she could do to me. That's the worst case scenario, you know. The Morrigan is not a wrathful goddess, and I have tried at length to talk about the fact that she is not a singularity. She is not a wrathful goddess of death by itself. There is no death without life and rebirth. There is death in terms of the ending of one cycle, which brings about the most positive change you will ever experience. I have this lovely rose quartz skull in my collection, in my thought process, because it represents loving death. Sometimes death is the needed release from pain. People don't think about these things. Death, she's a death goddess, so that's really, really scary. Well, why is death really scary? Death isn't really scary. To be honest, things like living but not really living, and loneliness and things like that are far more frightening than death. I've said that before. She has a triple aspect: maiden, mother and crone, Anu, Macha and Bave. She's not a goddess that cuddles, but she has a maiden aspect, a wild, free, fun. I'm trying to think of the best way of putting it. What's the best way of putting Anu's energies? She's a battle maiden, yes, she is. But she's the kind of maiden that would be running wild, running with her hair flying loose in the forests, in the meadows, amongst the rushes and the reeds, through rivers barefoot, free, wild and alive. She's the kind of mother who's a bit like a lioness with her kids, you know, protective and encourages them to be the best they can be on their terms. She's strength and supportive and all these other things. She's not, and I think this must be where some of this fear comes from this stereotype of her as a wrathful death goddess. Are people this afraid of her nature in all its glory that they think that it's hate? She's a shapeshifter, okay? So this is the first thing. Her energy never stays concentrated in one emotion like that. It moves. This is part of the reason she's so overwhelming. Like, people are used to goddess and god energy being quite familiar. Well, the Morrigan is constantly shifting, constantly moving, constant action, constant, you know, she's vivacious and sexual and alive, and that other energy, that darker energy, the death energy, the getting rid of that, things that no longer serve energy, boisterous and vital and alive and oomphy. And because she shapeshifts between these energies, because she has that strength of being, I just don't see this. She hates me. I don't see it. I just don't see it. Yes, I'm sure you could get wrath from her, and I'm sure you can get told off by her on a far lesser scale than the wrath, you know. And I've had warning messages, you know. I've had warning messages like, don't make this video. On occasion, like early on, like, don't do that. And if she doesn't want something done, she will, you know, she'll say no, because I actually meditated on the idea of, somebody asked me about my daily dedications and my daily prayers to the Morrigan, and she just turned around and went, nope. And I was like, I respect you. That's what you say, that's what we do. She doesn't do that very often. Very rarely. And when she says no, you know. She's like, nope. Boom, no. And so I just don't see it. The Morrigan isn't for everybody, and she won't work with everybody. And you're not going to get anything out of it, to be honest. If you go chasing her, it's unlikely that she will respond. She's a sovereign, okay? This is the best way I can think of putting this. She is a queen as well as a goddess. She rules over sovereignty. She may or may not listen to your petition. It depends on what exactly you are seeking, where you are coming from that on a personal level. You start seeking her because you're being frivolous and you want to smite your enemies and you're having a tiff with your neighbour and you've not made any efforts to sort it out and all the rest of it. She's probably going to ignore you, to be honest. She only really engages with those people whom, first and foremost, have probably been struggling and surviving and acting in honour and honourably, first and foremost. People that she decides are worthy. It's nothing to do with me and my feelings on it. She does that. You know, if she thinks you're worthy of her time and attention, which is serious dedication time, as we talked about earlier, then she will make herself known. And you're going to have to figure that out. Anybody who's ever really engaged with the Morrigan has had a time of figuring out it was her. Because she doesn't just give you everything on the platter, and she never will. She just doesn't do that. And because she doesn't give you everything you on the platter, she doesn't show up and tell you who she is straight off the bat, in my experience. She makes you work for it, she tests you, she puts you through it, like, can you figure this out, can you work this out for yourself? And because she does that, I very much doubt she's going to be like, I hate you. Even if she did do that, you know, why would she do... Even if she did give messages in a very straight up way, I very much doubt she would do the whole I hate you thing. My honest belief of it is she would just go, and you would feel the loss. So I hope that has answered questions around the question of, does the Morrigan hate me? I think that's all I can think to say. Yep. Many blessings.